produced by the author of Timber for Building.
Here's a nice Scots pine. This was shown in the pruning video, I think. And up in the crown, let's see if we can zoom in and identify there we go. And they're moving about in the wind. But there's some cones. Now those tight ones are this year's, and the slightly more open ones are last year's, or even longer. What you tend to get in the spring, you get a very warm day, gentle breeze, maybe late spring. Underneath these pines you hear this crack, crack, crick, crack, just gently, and it's the pine cones opening in the warm sunshine. And I have known it under Corsican pine, where you can just see the seeds fluttering down. They've got a little seed and a wing on them. Let's just have a look at this Monterey pine over here. I'm going to have to move the camera. Go round here. There's a couple of Montereys there. Let's go up. And on that outer branch somewhere, if I can find them, there are some cones. See if we can find them. There, found them. See those cones there? This hazel's just in the way, but you can see them behind that. They're Montereys. They're quite big, and they stay on the tree for a lot longer. But the bottom line is, when they fall off, there's still seeds in there, and you can collect them and sow them, obviously. So this is the Monterey pine cone. I'm just going to tap it and see what happens. As you can see, it's quite an old one, but a few bits of old seed came out, but nothing very entertaining. That's Scots pine cones, and they always look different when they've opened up. So let's move on. You're going, how do you get them to open up? Well, it's easy. You put them somewhere warm. A bowl or something like that, somewhere warm, in the corner of the conservatory or something like that. And they'll open up. I'll just move that seed out of the way. Now, these are a few cones that came from Sandringham. And these are Corsican pine, and these are Austrian pine. And look, these are the seeds out the Austrian pine. I think we're going to just zoom in and show those. And that's the wing, and that's the seed. And the seed easily pulls off the wing. And whilst we're there, that's one out of a Monterey. But I don't want to mix it up because they look fairly similar. So you can either keep them in the pot in a warm place and let these cones open up, and then knock the cones about and the seeds will come out. Or once they start to open it, you could put them in a paper bag, not a plastic bag, a paper bag, so it will breathe, and keep them relatively somewhere not too warm, not too dry, not too wet, not too cold, all that sort of stuff. and then you can sow them in the spring. As the temperature rises, you can sow these seeds in a pot. You can take the wings off if you want or not. It's just, but what it means is you're walking through the woods, you can pick cones up off the ground, stuff them in your pocket, and you will get some seeds out of them. I mean, you have to use your brain a bit, and you don't pick up the cones that are just rotten and falling apart, but the ones from last year or the year before. Anyway, then we'll go on to the next process.
I just want to add a little bit on to this seed sowing. It's about a thing called stratification, which is there's a coat on some seeds which needs to be broken down before they'll germinate, and the seeds need to be stored in damp, reasonably cold conditions, like just around about freezing, something like that, just above it, but for 2 or 3 weeks. And there are various books. This is a one by BTCV, that's an old one I've got, and then of course there's Forest Nursery Practice. So stratification, some seeds need it, others don't. I found that quite a few pines don't need it, but if you're talking, say for instance Norway spruce, it needs to have a period of cold, and in the compartment in the fridge, in a bag of sand or something like that, or in the freezer compartment. Some seeds need to get frozen, others don't. You have to do a bit of research or trial and error. Ash seeds, if you pick them late autumn before they come off the trees, but whilst they're still slightly green, they'll germinate straight away. Otherwise, once they mature, they have to be stratified. They have to go through a period of cold, damp cold, not dry cold. If you go dry cold, what it does basically, it's seed storage. So you still then have to stratify them after that. So some people, like in this BTCV book, it talks about putting your seeds in sand and then putting a mesh over the top of the pot to keep rodents out, and then burying it over winter and then sowing them in the spring. You get the general idea, but these conifers I found don't need that.
There's the leek seedlings growing on, been transplanted, and just over here we've got some conifer seedlings. That's some Corsican pine seedlings, and we picked the cones up last spring. And there are some Monterey pine seedlings. I think I'd have to give you some scale here. There we go. And they're growing away quite vigorously. They're about ready for transplanting. Otherwise they can start suffering from rot in the bottom. If they get a bit too damp or whatnot, you'll get them. I think that one's on its way out. Doesn't look quite so vigorous, and if you look down the bottom, it's looking a bit brown. Time to transplant them. And there's the next stage. You can see they're quite healthy, and that's how much it's grown this year. So these are ready to be planted out. And here's the other side of the lodge, and there are some Scots pine that I grew from seedlings a fair number of years ago now. So you can just pick the cones up and grow your own trees. Quite satisfying. And of course they've got their own cones on them now.